There was once a young boy named Milo who didn't know what to do with himself, not just sometimes, but always. When he was in school, he longed to be out, and when he was out, he longed to be in. On the way, he thought about coming home, and coming home, he thought about going. Wherever he was, he wished he were somewhere else, and when he got there, he wondered why he'd bothered. Nothing really interested him, least of all the things that should have. Those are the first few lines in Norton Juster's The Phantom Tollbooth, and depending on how similar you are to me, they probably just hit you like a freight train. I first encountered the Phantom Tollbooth in 5th grade while in my school district's Excel program, a program where I went once a week to a different class at a different school. In the Excel program, the teachers weren't required to follow the normal state curriculum, so we could learn about whatever our teachers wanted to teach us. In 3rd grade, we learned about Greek mythology, and our teacher actually read the first few chapters of The Lightning Thief to us back when that was the only book in the series. In 4th grade, we learned a lot about deductive reasoning, story writing, and other cultures around the world, which culminated in what was essentially like a GeoGuessr alien hunt our teacher created. But in 5th grade, we learned about architecture, photography, and philosophy. And I don't envy any person that has to teach philosophy to a bunch of 5th graders. I mean, when I was in 5th grade, my biggest concern was saving up money to buy a new iPod Nano because my friend kept showing me a Zune and said it was so much better than my iPod. But anyways, in order to teach us about philosophy, our teacher, Mr. Fisher, read us the first couple chapters of The Phantom Tollbooth. And it pretty much all went right over my head. But a few years back, I was at Barnes & Noble and I saw a shelf of really cheap books, and The Phantom Tollbooth was one of them, so I picked it up. And rereading it as an adult, I was completely blown away. I seriously think it is one of the best books you can read to your child or just read for yourself no matter what age you are. There are very few books that I think literally everybody should read, and The Phantom Tollbooth is one of those books. Oftentimes when we think of books and movies that are good for both kids and adults, we often focus on stories that might be hiding darker themes below the surface. My mind goes to something like Finding Nemo, which is animated beautifully and has tons of funny characters with great designs, but also is a touching story about a father desperately trying to save the only family that he has left. But The Phantom Tollbooth is so great for everybody because it almost forces all readers of all ages to engage with it on the same level. Because this book, to me, is all about challenging the way that you think. It is a story that takes a look at wordplay and perspective and humor, and it's just so unbelievably fun. So today I'm going to be going through the entire story of this book and mostly gushing about why I think it's so great. This will probably be a more personal video than usual. I'll be talking at times about how I personally relate to a lot of the concepts in this book and sharing a few stories from the veteran, aged, time-tested perspective of a 26-year-old. That's a joke, by the way. I know I'm very young, and beyond that, I look like a 15-year-old. So don't take any of what I say as me giving advice or talking like I know everything. I obviously don't. This video is really more for myself than anybody else, but I thought I'd share it anyways. Starting again with our first few lines, this is something that feels very relatable to me. I have a really hard time feeling content with what I'm doing at any given time. Like every time I'm writing a script for a video, I start wishing that I was filming instead, and then when I'm filming, I wish that I was editing, and when I'm editing, I just wish I was back to writing again. To compound this, I have ADHD, and I would say that I manage it pretty well, and I'm very fortunate to be on medication that works really well for me, but before that, things were rough. I would go through weeks at a time when nothing sounded interesting or fun to me. I would just sit down and play video games, the least productive, most dopamine-inducing thing I could think of, and I wouldn't even be able to enjoy myself at all. So already, Milo is a pretty relatable character, and beyond any personal connection the reader might have to him, he's set up to be a pretty unsatisfied little boy. Milo gets home to his room full of toys and sees that there is a big package waiting for him. He unwraps it to find a toll booth which comes with a set of instructions. It reads, "One genuine turnpike toll booth, easily assembled at home and for use by those who have never traveled in lands beyond." There is a disclaimer as well stating, "Results are not guaranteed, but if not perfectly satisfied, your wasted time will be refunded." Milo was intrigued by this strange gift. It conveniently comes with coins to pay the toll, as well as a map, and the map is of a bunch of places that Milo has never heard of before. He dusts off his toy car and hops inside, driving towards the toll booth. He deposits his coin in the slot and immediately finds himself cruising down a highway in an unfamiliar place. Driving in this forest, he finds a sign that says he's in the Land of Expectations and runs into a short man who tells him that he is the weatherman. Now, I'm just now realizing that so many aspects of this book rely on wordplay, so I'm going to just spell out words verbally whenever I come across something like this. Anyways, the weatherman is spelled W-H-E-T-H-E-R. He asks Milo if he thinks it'll rain, and Milo says that he should know since he's the weatherman, but the weatherman corrects him. He says it is far less important to know what the weather will be like rather than knowing whether there will be weather at all. That's the weatherman's specialty. Milo asks what kind of a place Expectations is, and he is told Expectations is the place you must go to before you get to where you're going. Of course, Some people never go beyond expectations, but my job is to hurry them along whether they like it or not. This is a pretty good example of what most of this book will be like. We will have very simple concepts that almost all of us understand intuitively, presented to us in a new way. I absolutely love this. I feel that it makes me take a look at things that I thought I knew and find new appreciation for them in ways I hadn't thought of before. That's why I say that it puts both children and adults on the same level. It's concerned with taking a look at the building blocks of writing an emotion that we can all relate to. It starts to rain and Milo continues his drive towards Dictionopolis. He says that Expectations was a fine place, but that he wouldn't get anywhere staying there all day. Likewise, if we spend all our time thinking about what might happen in any given situation, we will find ourselves frustrated and worried and not really getting anywhere. It is those steps that we take towards our destination, our actions committed in hope that things will work out for the best, that help us grow into more complete individuals. Continuing his drive, Milo ends up in a gray area that seems to go on forever. He stops and finds some very plain-looking people and asks them where he is. They tell him that he is in the doldrums, where thinking is strictly prohibited. The citizens here are called Lethargians, and despite laying around, they tell Milo that they are actually very busy each day. At 8 o'clock we get up, and then we spend from 8 to 9 daydreaming. From 9 to 9:30 we take our early mid-morning nap. From 9:30 to 10:30 we dawdle and delay. From 10:30 to 11:30 we take our late mid-morning nap. From 11:30 to 12:30 we bide our time and then eat lunch. From 1 to 2, we linger and loiter. From 2 to 2:30, we take our early afternoon nap. From 2:30 to 3:30, we put off for tomorrow what we could have done today. From 3:30 to 4:30, we take our early late afternoon nap. From 4 to 5, we loaf and lounge until dinner. From 6 to 7, we dilly-dally. From 7 to 8, we take our early evening nap, and then for an hour before we go to bed at 9, we waste time. They tell Milo that they want to get nothing done and that he is ruining their plans. He asks them if everyone in the doldrums is like this, and they say everyone except for the watchdog. The watchdog then comes bounding over. He is a large dog with a clock on one side of his body. He asks Milo what he's doing, and he says that he is just killing time. This angers the watchdog as he is literally part-time, and Milo corrects himself and says that he's stuck in the doldrums and needs to get out, and the watchdog asks him how he got here. Milo says that he wasn't thinking, and the watchdog tells him that if he got there by not thinking, the only way to leave is to think. So Milo starts his drive thinking a little more than before and escapes the doldrums. The doldrums are something that I find myself in if I'm not careful, and I'm sure you can all relate. If I don't start my day productively, I will put myself into a slump. I have this absolutely terrible habit of checking my YouTube Studio app on my phone first thing when I wake up. It's the app that shows me all my analytics for my channel, but it also shows the 3 most recent comments on my videos, and without fail, one of those comments will be a rude or hateful comment. It's like clockwork. I've been trying to kick this habit, as starting your day by being told that you are annoying, unfunny, or make terrible content isn't exactly the most motivating thing in the world. In fact, I find that my motivation comes from creative momentum. I'm much more motivated to start working on a new video immediately after I upload because my brain wants to keep going. Where I get into trouble is when I take a day or two off and find myself settling into a more and more sedentary routine. I got hooked on Pokemon Scarlet a couple weeks ago, and it killed my productivity. And that's not to say that all of these unproductive activities are completely useless, because relaxation is important after all, but turning your brain off for extended periods of multiple hours or days is a dangerous trap to fall into. Back to the story, the watchdog joins Milo on his journey to Dictionopolis, and we learn that his name is Talk. Milo starts to ask him why his name isn't Tick, since that's the sound that he makes. Talk explains his tragic backstory. When his older brother was born, his parents, who were also watchdogs, decided to name him Tick after the noise that he would surely make. To their horror, they found that Tick's clock only ever made the sound of talk. Determined to not make the same mistake twice, they named their second child Talk. Unfortunately for them, Talk's clock only ever made the tick sound, and it was too late for them to get the name changed on the birth certificate, hence the name Talk. This tragedy was so upsetting to Talk's parents that they decided to never have any more children and dedicate their lives to taking care of the poor and needy. This is a very specific brand of kind of dry, absurdist humor that I really enjoy. It reminds me of Calvin and Hobbes, which is my absolute favorite comic series of all time. Milo asks Talk why he became a watchdog, and Talk says that he comes from a long line of them and that they are vitally important to the lives of everyone. He says that before time was invented, no one had any idea whether they were eating at the right time or working at the right time, so the watchdogs invented time to solve that issue. He says that even though people think there's a lot of time, it is actually the most precious resource on the planet. The two continue to Dictionopolis, which is a large medieval town. Milo approaches the gate and finds a guard that asks if he is buying or selling. Milo doesn't know how to respond, and the guard asks if he has a reason for coming, but Milo isn't sure. The guard says that no one enters without a reason, but that he can borrow one of his old reasons, and he digs through a suitcase to find a medal with the words, "Why not?" written on them. The guard says this isn't a very good reason, but it'll have to do for now, and upon entering the city, Talk and Milo find themselves in the word market and are approached by 5 identical men. These men greet Milo and have a very peculiar way of talking. Whenever they say anything, the first one starts out and the rest follow with a synonym for that word. For example, when they first meet Milo, the first one says greetings and the rest follow with welcome, good afternoon, salutations, and hello. I assume it's not always a synonym per se, but some combination of words that means the same thing. These ministers tell Milo that Dictionopolis is the place where words are grown. We get a really funny look at the absurd logic that is going to show up throughout this entire book when Milo says that he didn't know that words grew on trees. The minister asks him if money grows on trees, and Milo says no, to which the minister responds that if money doesn't grow on trees, then something has to, hence the words growing on trees. Everyone around the minister cheers at this sound logic, and Milo heads on into the market, remarking on all the words around him and the strange ministers. He says he didn't know that words could be so confusing. Talk replies with, only when you use a lot to say so little. Milo remarks that this is the wisest thing he's heard all day. The word market has many vendors selling different words. The more specialized ones are more expensive, but you can buy the words happy or good quite cheaply. Milo only has the other coin that he needs to make it back to the toll booth and doesn't have enough money to buy any of the words, and he and Talk are interrupted by a giant bee. This bee is the spelling bee and can spell any word that you ask it. Milo asks how he became a spelling bee, and the bee says that he was flying around one day and realized that he wouldn't get anywhere without an education. Before he can finish his origin story, he is interrupted by another bug, a humbug. The humbug is known for telling lies, and the spelling bee tells Milo that nobody likes a humbug. The humbug disputes this and says that the king told him the other day that he loves humbugs. This is, of course, a lie. The humbug says that he comes from a long line of humbugs that started with his great-great-grandfather, George Washington Humbug. The spelling bee starts to get madder and madder at the humbug, and the two get in a scuffle, knocking down some of the crates of letters nearby, and Milo and Talk are caught in the middle of this fight. The letters and words that were knocked over has caused them to get mixed up, and one of the salesmen says, "Dumb what you've looked," and the other says, "Do going to what are we?" As is common in this book, the idea of getting your words mixed up is presented in a more literal manner. In the confusion of the market, Talk and Milo are approached by a police officer. His name is Officer Shrift, and he is the shortest police officer that Milo has ever seen. He tells Milo that he knows he is guilty and charges him with having a dog with an unauthorized alarm, sowing confusion, upsetting the apple cart, wreaking havoc, and mincing words. He says he is going to sentence them, but Talk says that only a judge can do that. And recognizing this logic, Officer Shrift puts on a black robe and is now the judge. He asks Milo if he'd like a short or a long sentence, and Milo asks for a short one, and Shrift replies with, "I am." He says that's the shortest sentence he knows. Everyone seems to agree that this was a fair sentence, and Shrift decides to throw on an additional little penalty of 6 million years in prison. He then changes outfits to become the jailer and takes Talk and Milo to the dungeon. Now in their cell, Milo tells Talk that you can get in a lot of trouble mixing up your words or not knowing how to spell them. He says that after 6 million years in prison, he's going to learn all the words he can. From the darkness of the cell, he hears someone say that this is a commendable and admirable goal. Milo walks over to the voice to find a pleasant old lady inside the cell with them. Officer Shrift had warned Milo and Talk of a witch in the cell, and Milo tells the lady to watch out for her, and she responds that she is the witch, but not a witch, a witch. Witch spelled W-H-I-C-H. She's the king's aunt and used to be in charge of deciding which words could be used and which couldn't be used, and she started getting more and more miserly with the allowance of words. This caused the sellers in the market to make less and less money, and for this, she was thrown in prison. Now, without her, people use far too many words to mean far too little. She says that people confuse her for a wicked witch, but that she might be just as horrible as one. Milo says that she's nice and that he will help her get out of prison. The witch appreciates the jester, but says that the only thing that can help her out is the return of rhyme and reason. Milo asks about this, and the witch tells him a story. Long ago, the land that they now live in was a barren place full of demons and confusion known as the Land of Null. Then, one day, a man in a ship arrived on the shores of the Sea of Knowledge. This man decided to build his city on this land and drive the demons out. The city became the kingdom that is now known as the Kingdom of Wisdom, and the king married and had 2 sons. As the king grew older, he gave his sons charge of the kingdom. They went their separate ways and built 2 cities. One went south to the foothills of Confusion and built Dictionopolis, the city of words. The other prince went north to the mountains of Ignorance and built Digitopolis, the city of numbers. Both cities expanded and flourished, and the demons were driven out further and further. But the 2 brothers would grow more and more competitive with each other. Ahaz, the unabridged, king of Dictionopolis, would boldly claim that words are more important than numbers. The other brother, now the math magician, ruler of Digitopolis, would claim that numbers are more important than words. The king knew nothing of this rivalry, however. One day while taking a walk, the king and queen would discover two girls left as orphans. They would decide to raise these golden-haired girls as their own. At the end of the king's life, he entrusted the girls, now known as Rhyme and Reason, with the kingdom. They were loved by all and able to solve any dispute that happened throughout the land. Any dispute, that is, except the argument between the two princes. A grand tribunal was called, and after hours and hours of debate and witnesses, Rhyme and Reason decreed that both words and numbers were equal in importance. This verdict was celebrated by everyone in the kingdom except the two brothers, who were furious, each claiming that their words or numbers were superior. Enraged, the brothers imprisoned Rhyme and Reason in the castle in the sky, and since then, the kingdom has fallen into disrepair and chaos. Milo tells the witch that he and Talk will free the princesses, but she says the castle in the sky is guarded by black-hearted demons and will not be easy to access. Milo laments the fact that he has to spend 6 million years in jail, and the witch tells him that Shrift is never serious about putting people in jail and that they are free to go whenever. She tells him to push the button on the wall. Milo does, and the doors open. Milo and Talk make it out of the dungeon and are immediately found by the ministers from earlier. They tell them that their presence is requested at the royal banquet and that they will take their wooden wagon there. Milo asks how the wagon will move all on its own. The ministers shush him and tell him to quit talking because the wagon goes without saying. The royal banquet is just as strange as everything we've seen so far. King Ahaz is a massive man who asks Milo to pick the meal since he is the guest of honor. Milo, having been told by his parents that it's polite to eat a light meal when at a guest's house, suggests that they eat a light meal. The waiters bring in dishes full of lights of all colors and brightness. The king then asks Milo to make a speech, and Milo starts out by giving platitudes to the king, but is cut off almost immediately, and the king says that their speeches must be short. Each guest gives their short speech, which consists solely of the food they would like to eat. The spelling bee and the humbug are also guests at this dinner, and their food is brought out to them. Milo is disappointed at his meal. He says he would have said something different if he knew he was going to have to eat his words. The king calls for desserts from the half-bakery. He explains that it's where all the half-baked ideas come from. The guests feast on the earth is flat and the moon is made of green cheese, and Milo enjoys the taste of these. Talk tells him that half-baked ideas can be enticing, but to not eat too many of them. He says they are bad for you in the end, and Milo decides to wrap up Everything Happens for the Best in a napkin and take it with him. After the banquet, the humbug is positively stuffed and starts to feel nauseous. He stays behind with Milo, Talk, and the king, and the rest of the guests head off to dinner. Milo thinks it's strange that they would eat dinner right after the banquet, and the king starts to take offense to this as well. He says that he will make a law that dinner must be eaten before the banquet. Milo points out that this is just as bad, and the king starts to lament the state of his city. He asks what he can do to fix it, and Milo tells him that he should bring back Rhyme and Reason. The king admits that he does miss them, but he doesn't know how to find them, and the humbug says that it's actually a pretty simple task, all things considered. He says that it would be easy for Milo. All that you have to do is travel through miles of harrowing and hazardous countryside into unknown valleys and uncharted forests, past the yawning chasms and trackless wastes, until he reached Digitopolis, if, of course, he ever reached there. Then he would have to persuade the math magician to release the little princesses, and, of course, he'd never agree to do anything that the king agreed with. And even if he did, the king certainly wouldn't do anything that he agreed with. From there, it's a simple matter of entering the mountains of ignorance, full of perilous pitfalls and ominous overtones, a land to which many venture but few return, and whose evil demons slither slowly from peak to peak in search of prey. Then an effortless climb up a 2,000-step circular stairway without railings into a high wind at night, for in those mountains it is always night, to the castle in the air. After a pleasant chat with the princesses, all that remains is a leisurely ride back through the chaotic crags, whose frightening fiends have sworn to tear any intruder limb from limb and devour him down to his belt buckle. Having been shown how simple of a task this is, the king decides that Milo and Talk should be the ones to do it. Also, since the humbug knows the way, he will act as their guide. The humbug objects to this, but is forced along by the king, and the three of them set off on their journey to find Rhyme and Reason, and with this, our main quest can begin. As a parting gift, the king gives Milo a box full of all the words he knows, and he says that he will find useful things in there, and that so many of his problems can be solved with words. I personally really love stories that give a roadmap before the journey takes place. I think it's a really fun way for younger readers to engage with very basic foreshadowing. It's always interesting to listen to all the descriptions of what's to come and imagine them in your head, only to see how close you were when the story makes it to that point. Continuing on our journey, Milo, Talk, and the humbug get in Milo's toy car and take the scenic route towards Digitopolis. They stop and take a look at the point of view. There, Milo finds a boy who is always floating about 2 feet off the ground. Milo says that the point of view is beautiful, and the boy says that it all depends on how you look at it. Milo asks him why he's floating in the air, and the boy says it's because he hasn't grown all the way yet. He says that in his family, everybody starts in the air and then grows towards the ground. That way, they always see things from the same angle and the same point of view. And he thinks it's strange that Milo would start on the ground and grow taller. Milo says that he happens to like his point of view lower as a child, and Tonks says that this is very wise. He asks the boy if everybody in his family grows the same way that he does, and the boy says that almost all of them do, but some of them are born upside down with their feet facing the sky. He says those people grow 10 times the height of everybody else, and they probably walk amongst the stars now. Milo and his group continue on their scenic route through the woods. They find themselves lost and they see a house, and Milo decides to knock on the door and ask for help. The first door he knocks on is labeled The Giant, but a normal-sized person opens the door. Milo asks him if he's the giant, and he says that he is. He's just the smallest giant in the world. Milo asks if his group is lost, and the giant tells him to ask the short person on the other side of the house. The group goes to the back door, which is identical to the first, and they knock, and the same normal-sized person opens up the door. Milo asks if he is the short person, and the man says that he is the tallest short person in the world. Milo again asks if they are lost, and he tells him to ask the fat man. And they find the skinniest fat man in the world, who tells them to ask the fattest skinny person in the world. Milo is fed up with this, and he tells the man that he knows that it's just him inside, and that there aren't actually 4 people living there, and he tells them that he does this so he can hold 4 jobs at once. He also tells them that he doesn't know whether his group is lost or not, and that it's much harder to know whether he has been lost than if you are currently lost, and Milo is confused at this. The group continues to walk through the woods, and the boy from earlier tells them that they are near the 2 cities of illusions and reality. Milo asks what illusions are. The boy tells him that illusions are things that aren't there, and Milo asks how you can see something that isn't there, and he is told that it is often easier to see an illusion than reality. An illusion is something that can be seen in your mind whenever you close your eyes, but reality is something that you have to actively pay attention to. The boy says they've made it to the city of reality. Milo looks around, but he can't see anything, and the boy says that reality was a city where everyone would briskly walk from work to home and work to home, place to place, while never looking at the world around them. Since they were only focused on where they were going, the city didn't feel the need to be visible anymore. It wasn't truly being seen, so it faded into invisibility, but the city still exists. The humbug asks why people don't live in illusions since it's a much prettier city, but the boy says that some of them do live there. But it isn't much better to live in a place where you can see what isn't there than it is to live in a place where you can't see what's really there. And Milo asks how they can fix this. The boy says that when rhyme and reason are back, all of this will go back to normal. The group continues on and finds a massive symphony orchestra. The orchestra plays their instruments, but no sound comes out of them, and the boy says that they are playing the sunset. After the sunset is over, Milo approaches the conductor, an old man named Chroma. He tells Milo that he and the orchestra are in charge of all the color in the world, and that the orchestra always plays, and Milo asks what would happen if they stopped playing. Chroma cuts off the orchestra, and Milo describes the world as looking like a coloring book that hasn't been colored in yet. Chroma then starts the orchestra again, and the colors begin anew. It's nighttime, so the group and Chroma decide to lay out on some of the massive sheet music nearby and go to bed. Lucky for them, this orchestra doesn't make any noise, so they can sleep just fine. Milo wakes up a few minutes before sunrise. Chroma is still sleeping, so Milo decides to try to conduct the orchestra himself. Unfortunately, he doesn't know how, and things soon start to go very wrong. The musicians start playing faster and faster and in dissonance with each other. The sky turns a shade of red, a bright green snow starts to fall, and a blue blackbird flies by. With this increased tempo, the sunsets and sunrise start to come quicker and quicker, and Milo thinks it must have been a week that went by in the past minute. Chroma wakes up from his sleep and rescues Milo and gets the orchestra back on track. He thanks Milo for his company and says that he will let him conduct again some other day. The group continues their journey through the woods, and the boy leaves Milo with a telescope since he can see what so many others cannot. Something that I love about this book is that Milo is treated as exceptional for just being curious. You'd think that Chroma would be mad at him for trying to conduct this orchestra and screwing everything up, but Chroma just tells him that he'll figure it out someday and he'll let him conduct again. The mere act of Milo asking so many questions is what leads him to so many opportunities. When I was younger, I was painfully shy and also terrified of looking like I didn't know what I was doing, and I remember falling behind in math around 7th grade. This was kind of odd for me at the time because I was always pretty good at all my school subjects and ahead of the curve, and all my older brothers were exceptional students. And I remember starting to get confused at what we were talking about in my math class, and my parents kept asking me to ask for help from the teacher, but I just couldn't do it for some reason. And to this day, math is definitely not my strong suit. I can do mental math and like basic algebra, but I avoided calculus like the plague in high school and college. But I sometimes wonder if those math pains could have been remedied by simply being more curious and asking for more help. Maybe I could have pushed through and learned to love the subject. So I find it fitting that Milo's curiosity be rewarded so often. The book reminds us that we get nowhere by keeping our questions and curiosity to ourselves. Continuing their journey to save the princesses, the group runs into an old carnival wagon that acts as a laboratory for a cacophonous discord. Doctor of Dissonance. The Doctor is in charge of creating all of the loud, grating, obnoxious sounds that exist in the world, and Milo asks him why anyone would ever buy those sounds from him. But the Doctor says that business is booming. Now that there are large cities and automobiles and factories, terrible loud noises are in high demand, and he can hardly even keep up with the orders. He diagnoses Milo with a lack of noise and starts cooking up a medication that will slowly make it so he's unable to hear beautiful noises ever again. The group is skeptical of this, and Talk tells him that he doesn't think that lack of noise is a real illness, and the Doctor says that of course it isn't, he only treats diseases that don't exist. That way, if he fails to cure the patient, they can't complain since the illness never existed in the first place. Since Milo won't take the medication, he says that he'll just give it to Din. Din is the Doctor's assistant. He's kind of a shapeless, formless, black, smoke, sludge-looking thing. The Doctor discovered him in a soda bottle years ago and raised him as his own, and Milo says that he's never even heard of the Din before. But the Doctor says that he has and asks him what his parents tell him to stop when he's making too much noise in his room. That awful Din. Going on to question about more terrible noises, the humbug responds with, that awful row. And the Din says that that awful row was actually his grandfather who perished in the Great Silence Epidemic of 1712. And for his spooky appearance, the Din is actually a surprisingly emotional and gentle creature. Milo and the group say they need to head out, and the Din is also leaving to collect all the terrible noises he finds that day for the Doctor to make his medication with. He tells Milo that they will have to pass through the awful Valley of Sound and bids the group farewell. He says that he will see them again whenever they are making that awful din. The group continues their journey by hopping into Milo's car and driving through the Valley of Sound, and Milo doesn't see why the Din described it as a terrible place. He tries to tell Talk and the humbug that it's beautiful there, but when he tries to talk, no sound comes out of his mouth, and Talk panics, not being able to hear his clock keeping time. They stumble upon a group of protesters who are all holding signs that say things like, "Down with the silence," and "All quiet is no diet," and "It is laudable to be audible." Milo stops the car and the group pulls out a chalkboard and starts writing a message for him. They ask if he is there to solve their problems, and he says that he doesn't even know what the problem is. They tell him that the valley that they're in used to be known as the Valley of Sound, and it was ruled over and protected by the Soundkeeper who lives in her fortress nearby. The people of the valley helped her catalog all of the sounds that were made every day, and everything was going great, but as more and more people moved into the valley, there began to be worse and worse sounds. People stopped appreciating the beautiful sounds and could only notice the terrible ones, and then Dr. Discord showed up, and he said he could cure them with his medicine. He gave all the citizens of the valley his medicine, which made them unable to hear the beautiful sounds ever again, and all that was left were the terrible noises. In frustration, the Soundkeeper decided to lock away all the sounds for herself, and all this happened around the same time that the princesses were banished. Every day, new hardships are reported and sent to the Soundkeeper, but she never responds. Milo reads a note that says, "There was a thunderstorm last week, and the thunder still hasn't arrived. How long should we wait?" The citizens have a plan, however. They have a cannon with them, and they tell Milo that he has to visit the Soundkeeper and escape with one sound, no matter how small. Then, they will load this sound into the cannon and shoot it at the castle walls, destroying the vault that all the sounds are locked in. Thus, the Valley of Silence will be the Valley of Sound once again. Milo goes to the castle and slips a note that says, "Knock knock" under the door, and the Soundkeeper calls out to him and tells him he can enter. Inside the castle, Milo is able to make noise again, and he finds the Soundkeeper listening to a system of radios that she has set up, each one of them playing nothing but silence. The Soundkeeper loves listening to these programs every day, but she gets lonely, so she calls herself on her phone a few times a day as well. Milo asks her why she even collected the sounds in the first place. She says that if she didn't, all of the old sounds would stay in the air and clog everything up. She shows him the vaults, which are full of envelopes and containers of all the sounds in the world. Milo starts to say something, and the Soundkeeper shows him that each thing he says, each sound that he makes, is cataloged in a file with his name, and Milo tries to steal one of these sounds. The Soundkeeper catches on to this and tells him to leave the sounds alone, and she shows him more of the sound vaults, and Milo asks why she can't just release the sound again. She says that ever since Dr. Discord arrived, she no longer trusts the valley with the sounds anymore. Milo comes up with a plan to sneak one of the sounds out of the castle. He starts speaking, saying the word but then he bites down on that sound with his teeth, keeping it stored away in his closed lips. The Soundkeeper thanks him for the visit. As he is leaving, she has him turn out his pockets, and he shows that he didn't steal any of the sounds, and upon exiting the fortress, Milo recovers the sound that he kept in his lips. The citizens ask him where the sound is, and he says that it's on the tip of his tongue. He goes over to the cannon and places the sound there, and the cannon then blasts the walls of the castle. All of the sounds come spilling out at once. They flow through the valley, and the Din appears, wanting to return the sounds that he found that are too pleasant for him. The Soundkeeper sees this and thanks the Din, not knowing that he was so polite. She reconsiders her sound ban and tells Milo the way to Digitopolis. While on their way there, Milo and the group see a lovely island quite a ways off the shore. The humbug says that they should stop there, and Milo asks how they will get there, and the humbug takes a massive leap to it. Milo and Talk do the same effortless leap, and they found that they have just jumped to the island of conclusions, and that the island looks a lot less inviting than it did from the shore. Milo says that he'd like to jump back, but it's much harder to go back once you've jumped to conclusions, and they have to take the grueling swim back to shore. The humbug says the island wasn't so bad, but Milo says that he will think very hard the next time he jumps to conclusions, and the group continues their journey. This is something that I really appreciate about the literal representations of these ideas. I don't typically think about the damage that jumping to conclusions can really do, but representing it as this island that is easy to jump to and looks beautiful, but is actually kind of gross and takes a long time to swim back from, is a great way to teach the reader to be more careful with their thoughts and words. The group finds themselves at a path that splits into 3 roads. There's a sign that says Digitopolis 5 miles, 1,600 rods, 8,800 yards, 26,400 feet, 316,800 inches, and 633,600 half inches, and then some. The humbug suggests they travel by miles since it's shorter, but Milo wants to travel by half inches since it's quicker, and as they contemplate this, they are interrupted by a strange creature. He says that it's nice because each of the faces can do a different thing, and he says that only having one face must be tiring since it has to make so many different faces. Milo asks which is the quickest road to Digitopolis, and the dodecahedron starts giving him various math problems like when 2 cars traveling opposite directions at different speeds would intersect. As Milo is struggling with the problems, the humbug loudly proclaims the answer is 17. He is wrong. Talk realizes that all the distances on the signs are the same and that the paths are identical. Milo asks if every road is 5 miles to Digitopolis, and the dodecahedron responds with, "I'm afraid it has to be. It's the only sign we've got." They reach Digitopolis, and Milo asks if this is where the numbers are made, and the dodecahedron scoffs and says that numbers have to be dug out of the ground. He shows them the largest number mine where the workers dig out the numbers and put them in minecarts to ship them off to the surface. It is there that they meet the mathemagician. The mathemagician is completely obsessed with counting and tells them that numbers are the most precious thing in the universe. The humbug asks if there are any actual precious stones in the mines as well. They are then shown a room where thousands of precious stones have been thrown away into large piles, and the mathemagician says they're a nuisance and that simply get in the way of the numbers. As we've seen before, this book is trying to teach us that words, numbers, and the beauty of the world around us should be what's most precious to us. The mathemagician calls for some lunch to be served, and they are brought a big pot. Milo notices that some of the numbers that have been mined are fractured and broken. The mathemagician tells him that they use those for fractions, and he asks Milo if he'd like a portion of the meal. Milo eats a portion, and then another, but he still finds himself hungrier than when he started. He is told that he is eating subtraction stew, and that in Digitopolis, people eat when they are full until they are hungry again. The humbug asks how they know if they've had enough, and the mathemagician says that eating until you're hungry means you always have more than enough, and that Milo must have been quite full to eat so much. He also tells them that whenever he travels, he takes the shortest distance between 2 points, and when he needs to be in several places at once, he simply multiplies. He shows them his magic staff, which Milo remarks is just a pencil, and the mathematician says that if you know how to properly use a pencil, you can do just about anything you can think of. Milo asks him to show him the biggest number he has, and the mathematician pulls out a very, physically large 3. He says that he meant the greatest number, and he's told about the concept of infinity. He says that if he wants to find the land of infinity, he should take the staircase, and he opens the door to a spiral staircase, and Milo starts climbing the stairs. After a while, he realizes that he is no closer to the top than when he began, and he then runs into a boy that is completely missing the right half of his body. Milo asks him why he's only half a boy, and he says that he's actually 0.58 of a child. He says that he used to be 0.42 a couple years ago, and Milo asks if the rest of the family is like that. But the boy says he comes from a completely average family, because the average family has 2.58 children, so naturally, he is the 0.58 child. And Milo says that averages aren't really real. The boy tells him that averages can actually be very useful, because if you had no money, but you were with 4 people that each had $10, you would have an average of $8. He gives him some more examples, but Milo is still confused. He descends the staircase to find Talk, the humbug, and the mathematician waiting for him. He tells them that nothing makes sense in Digitopolis and that things that are correct don't seem to be right. The mathematician starts to lament this as well and starts crying. He says that it's been bad since Rhyme and Reason were banished and that it's all the fault of Ahaz, the king of Dictionopolis. Milo says that they're there to actually rescue the princesses and they ask for permission, but the mathematician says that if Ahaz agreed to it, then he disagrees with it. He says they can't agree on anything and that Ahaz didn't even respond to his letter. He shows the letter to Milo, who finds a sheet of paper with just a bunch of random numbers written on it. He says the only way that he will let Milo pass through Digitopolis into the Mountains of Ignorance is if he can be proven wrong. Milo says that if he will disagree with everything that Ahaz says, and Ahaz will disagree with everything he says, then they are really in agreement because they agree to disagree. Having been thoroughly proven wrong by this, the mathematician allows the group to pass through to the Mountains of Ignorance to reach the princesses. The car won't make make it up the mountain, so they have to go by foot, and Milo carries with him all of the gifts that he has collected so far: the box of words, the telescope, the sights and sounds, and his very own magic staff gifted to him by the mathematician, that being a pencil. The group continues up the mountains where things are very dark, and Milo begins to say that they will need to find a place to sleep for the night, but he's interrupted by a giant, dirty bird. He tries to ask the bird more questions, but he is always interrupted by it. The bird is the ever-present word snatcher, and he takes the words right out of your mouth. Milo asks if everyone in the Mountains of Ignorance is like the dirty bird, and he says that they are very much worse and that he's actually from a place called context. But the word snatcher doesn't like being in context and prefers to spend most of his time out of context. The humbug grows tired of him and scares him away, and the group comes across a businessman with a blank face. He greets them cordially and gives them each a task. Milo is to count all of the grains of sand in a large pile, Talk has to pick away slowly at a granite wall, and the humbug is to transport all of the well water into a container using only a dropper. The group sets out to work on their tasks and works for hours and hours and hours, and they find themselves not getting tired at all, and Milo uses his pencil to see how long this will all take. He learns he will be working for several hundred years and asks the faceless businessman if they can leave. The businessman says that there are lots of unimportant tasks for them to do, so they can't leave. He reveals himself to be the terrible Trivium, the demon of petty tasks and worthless jobs, ogre of wasted effort, and monster of habit. He tells them they have to do all the easy, unimportant tasks so they can put off the important ones, and they're interrupted by a voice that tells them to run. The group agrees to this and sprints away. The voice behind them keeps directing them, telling them to jump and run and climb and all sorts of things, leading them to a deep, dark cave. They stop and look behind them to see who's been directing them, but they see that there's nobody there. Still, the voice continues. It tells them that it is a massive, dangerous, ugly, horrifying beast and that they should obey what he says. Milo pulls out his telescope, which shows him what things really are, and he looks through it at the voice. He finds a tiny, timid creature who is the demon of insincerity. He tells them that he fools people by giving bad advice, but his fun has been spoiled now that Milo can actually see him, so he runs off. The group needs to escape the pit that they are in, so they start climbing up, only to be interrupted and grabbed by the gelatinous giant, and he is the mountain that they are climbing up. He says that he only ever tries to fit in with what he is around. He has no form of his own. He is also completely unable to make a decision for himself and is very timid, and he says that he might just eat one of them. He grabs them in his hand, and the humbug tells him that he might find their box of ideas, the box that Ahaz gave them, useful. Being presented with all these unique and new ideas scares the gelatinous giant, who puts them down right away. Unfortunately, the giant's yelling gives away the position of the group, and they can see demons of all shapes and sizes heading towards them. They run away quickly. They sprint towards the tallest peak where the castle in the sky is, but are stopped by an old man with a quill. He asks them their names, where they are going, where they came from, how tall they are, what their favorite food is, what their shoe size is, how many people are in their family. He is the census taker. Milo tries to get through all this as fast as possible since the demons are close behind them, and he grows frustrated that it's taking so long. But then he looks over and sees a fancy carnival nearby, enticing him, drawing him in, and distracting him. The humbug and Talk are also distracted by sights of their own until Milo snaps out of it and says that they are being tricked. The census taker tells him that that's his job. He takes people's senses. His job is to help people find what they aren't looking for. And with the demons on their heels, the group heads past the census taker to the spiral staircase leading to the castle in the sky. The demons curse at them, refusing to ascend the staircase themselves, and the group climbs higher and higher, trying to stop themselves from looking down, and eventually they reach the castle. They are greeted by Rhyme and Reason, who are lovely beyond all earthly description. They ask Milo how long he has been traveling, and he says it's been a long time and that he has made many, many mistakes. Reason tells them that making mistakes is something he should never feel bad about. He is just learning more and more, and he says that there is always so much to learn, and it kind of confuses him. But Rhyme says that it's not just learning things that's important, it's learning what to do with the things that you learn and learning why you learned them in the first place. They tell Milo that everything he ever wants and needs might be just out of reach, but if he keeps learning and keeps growing, he will find himself fulfilled. This moment has always been a sweet one to me. The princess is telling Milo that making mistakes is okay and that learning to learn is the most important thing is really touching. So many of the characters in this story are stuck in their ways and they think they know everything, but the reality is that the wisest people are those who often ask the most questions. This reunion with the princesses is cut short when they hear the sounds of the demons cutting down the staircase. The castle starts to shake and rumble, and they know they need to find a way to escape. The princesses point out that time flies, and Talk has them climb on top of them and fly them away from harm. The castle, now nothing but an empty prison, floats away into the sky. Talk can't carry them for long, and they soon find themselves running away from the hordes of demons approaching them. There are the Gorgons of hate and malice, the threadbare excuse, the triple demons of compromise, and many others. As the demons are about to catch up to them, they run into the armies of the Kingdom of Wisdom. The mathematician Domitian and Ahaz lead the charge together, driving the demons back. With the return of rhyme and reason, the kings are able to put aside their differences, and the entire kingdom cheers for the princesses, and Milo and his crew are lauded as heroes. Milo isn't so sure that he should really be celebrated. He says that he made so many mistakes and needed so much help along the way, and he doesn't feel like he earned the victory. Rhyme and reason tell him that he had the courage to try, and that is the most important thing of all. The kings then reveal to him that they hid one thing about his quest from him. It was impossible. But not knowing that it was impossible, Milo found a way to be successful, because so many impossible things are possible so long as you don't know they are impossible. The kingdom has a large carnival, and after it's over, Rhyme and Reason tell Milo that it's time for him to say goodbye to everyone and return back to his world. He tears up as he says goodbye to his friends, but he is reminded that they will always be with him as the lessons he learned along the way. He gets in his car and, using the other coin he has, enters the toll booth once again. He finds himself back in his room, noticing that only an hour has passed since he left. He's exhausted, so he goes to sleep and sits through school the next day, anxious to return through the toll booth yet again. But he comes home to find that the toll booth is gone, replaced by a letter addressed to Milo, who now knows the way. It reads, "Dear Milo, you have now completed your trip courtesy of the Phantom Toll Booth. We trust that everything has been satisfactory and hope you understand why we had to come and collect it. You see, there are so many other boys and girls waiting to use it too. It's true that there are many lands you've still to visit, some of which are not even on the map, and wonderful things to see that no one has yet imagined. But we're quite sure that if you really want to, you'll find a way to reach them all by yourself. Yours truly." The signature was blurred and couldn't be read. Milo walked sadly to the window and squeezed himself into one corner of the large armchair. He felt very lonely and desolate as his thoughts turned far away, to the foolish, lovable bug, to the comforting assurance of Talk standing next to him, to the erratic, excitable Din, to little Alec, who he hoped would someday reach the ground, to Rhyme and Reason, without whom wisdom withered, and to the many, many others he would remember always. And yet, even as he thought of all these things, he noticed that somehow the sky was a lovely shade of blue, and that one cloud had the shape of a sailing ship. The tips of the trees held pale young buds, and the leaves were a rich, deep green. Outside the window, there was so much to see and hear and touch, walks to take, hills to climb, caterpillars to watch as they strolled through the garden. There were voices to hear and conversations to listen to in wonder and the special smell of each day. And, in the very room in which he sat, there were books that could take you anywhere, and things to invent and make and build and break, and all the puzzle and excitement of everything he didn't know. Music to play, songs to sing, and worlds to imagine and then someday make real. His thoughts darted eagerly around as everything looked new and worth trying. "Well, I would like to make another trip," he said, jumping to his feet, "but I really don't know when I'll have the time. There's just so much to do right here." And that is Norton Juster's The Phantom Tollbooth. I really love this book. I think it's just so clever and funny and inspiring, and really is something that everyone should read. Please go read it yourself if you haven't yet. There is so much that I didn't have time to cover in this video, and I think the world could use more curious people, and this book will remind you that curiosity and questions are healthy and normal and acceptable. It's nice to live in a settled life of routine and comfort. I certainly love that myself, but it is always good from time to time to take a look at the world in a way that you never have before. And The Phantom Tollbooth teaches us to view every mundane aspect of the human experience as something to be learned from, celebrated, and loved. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'm not expecting this to get a ton of views since it's very different from what I normally talk about, but I just had to talk about this book. If you have a book that you'd like me to cover, then let me know in the comments below. I'll be doing some more internet horror video stuff in the near future, and then I'll go back to more literature-focused stuff. I'm hoping to keep a better balance of those two things going forward. If you haven't subscribed yet, then please do. I'm trying to reach 100,000 subs by the end of 2025, and I can use all the help I can get. I make videos on literature, mostly horror literature, and internet horror, and SCP universe stuff, so if any of that interests you, then please subscribe for more of that stuff. If you'd like to support me further, then consider becoming a channel member for just $3 a month. Channel members get early access to all of my videos, access to some exclusive videos, access to my Discord, and access to my members-only book club, link in the description. A massive thank you to all my gold tier members: Amanda Mapes, Lucas Fernando, Chris Lamb, Ezra, Silent Trails, Blue Radio Media, Tyler Lepper, Vix Corner, Miss Joy 16, Coco Boco, Cherry Shark, Moonsong Blog, Starlight Pink, Jack Zamora, Matt Castellon, Lexi, Arcade Link Author, B, The Official Gar, YBET Flow, Hi, Sasso, Zapodapos, Samara, Laura Gonza, Classic Pats Games Plus, Miranda M, Hexmaniac Rafa, Heat O'Brien, Ben Best, Marin Elizabeth, The Next Nim, Digital Fox, Issa, Uton, Sherbert, Emilio Nomura, Temple, LA Jupiter Rainstorms, Junie, Maddie, Ellis Hale, Vesper, Jess, Miley Bop, Abigail Wagner, Thunder Reproductions, Canadine, Emma Gees, Red, Moss, Maya S, Site 42, Rye Like Bread, Alicia, Chipsa, Out of the Fandom, Getty Hirsch, Maddie, FM, Basil, Robstar 3112, Freddy and Foxy, Blair Reverse, Liminal Lake, Florapause, Jojo, Yum the Epic, Spirit Hotline, Furbus GDDC, Ketra Elizabeth, Mayfield, Shruby, Litcher Something, Jazz, Homie Gaming, Sue, Bundle of Sticks, Danny, Jesse Salo, Steel Cut Oaths, Veronica Heredia, oh my goodness, Veronica Heredia, Phantoms Forever, and Ashley. Sorry, I'm not doing another take of that. I'm tired. But your guys' support really does mean the world to me. I'm trying to find a good upload schedule where I give you guys a ton of content, but also have time for like myself and my family and my other personal interests. But your patience with the inconsistency of uploads lately has been very, very appreciated. I've been pretty busy, but it feels like things are maybe calming down now, which has been really nice. But yeah, thanks again to everyone for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.
Take me up again, let me see the stars. Is there life on Mars? 'Cause I've run out of luck here on Earth. I'm a wanderer. Another trip around the sun makes these memories flood, and I could wash it down with the atmosphere. You're cool blue and crystal clear. I'm an astronaut flying above, but can't fall in love. Floating alone, brave enough to see the cosmos, too scared to say hello. And I know one day I'll be gold